The NFL owner meetings have wrapped up in Florida. We have some results on the proposals. We also have some potential drama in Dallas with Micah Parsons. NFL Spotlight starts now. Welcome in. It is the Wednesday, April 2 edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. I am your host, Ari Meirov. A very busy Tuesday around the NFL. The owner meetings were supposed to end on Wednesday today, but they wrapped up all the meetings and all the voting on Tuesday, so they finished a day early, and we have a lot to get to with all the results, what did happen, what didn't happen. Let me bring in my good friend Ben Allen. And Ben, I have a feeling we're going to talk about all the owner meeting stuff, but we're actually starting somewhere else here today.
Yeah, let's talk about America's team. Let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys and what's going on between Jerry Jones, the Dallas Cowboys, Micah Parsons, and his agent, David Mulugheta. Micah Parsons, he'd like to be likely the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. Jerry Jones seems willing to do so. They have been discussing this, but there's a big caveat to this. While these discussions have been taking place, the agent, David Mulugheta, for Micah Parsons, has not been involved. And Jerry Jones wants to keep it that way. And he doesn't seem interested in the idea of having an agent come in, look through the contract, do this, that, and the other. And this isn't totally unlike what they do in Dallas. But if you're going to be talking major money, seems like a good idea to have the agent involved. So what can you give us as far as more context to what this story is? And how does this get resolved before things turn ugly?
So there's so much to this, and I'm kind of happy all of this was finally reported because there have been rumblings around the NFL that this has been going on. And the reality is, Jerry Jones has done this a lot over the course of his career as the owner of the Cowboys, where obviously every player hires an agent because they don't want to negotiate for themselves. These people do it for a living. They know how to negotiate. They understand the CBA and how the NFL contracts work with fully guaranteed and non-guaranteed and injury guarantees. But Jerry Jones, he loves to talk directly to his players, and usually he tries to sell them on the fact that they are America's team and you could build a brand in Dallas because of who we are. And he's done this over the course of his ownership with players like Tony Romo and Jason Witten and Tyron Smith and Zach Martin and Jalen Smith, the linebacker. He tried to do it with DeMarcus Lawrence. He tried to do it with Dak Prescott, and Prescott essentially told him, Jerry, I love you. You're so important to me, but go talk to Todd France. He's the guy to negotiate with. And of course, Dak has gotten some of the best deals in NFL history with what he's done over the last two deals in Dallas. So Jerry tries to go and not have the agent. And Jerry told reporters in Florida that I'm the one who has to write the check. Micah is the one who has to agree to it. So that is the straightest way to get there. That is the principle that is involved here. That is not the way it works. So there's a reason why Micah Parsons hired David Mulugheta, and Jerry went as far to say that I don't even know who the agent name is. And Jerry is joking. First of all, even if you're an average fan, David Mulugheta is one of the most well-known and recognizable agents in the NFL. Jerry Jones definitely knows who he is. In fact, he has negotiated with him in the past. They have a safety on the team, Malik Hooker, who also has David Mulugheta, who got an extension a couple of years ago. So they know Micah Parsons has needed an extension. They knew he needed one last year. They signed him to a rookie contract back in 2021. That was all done with David Mulugheta. So obviously this is just Jerry talking, and he loves talking, and that is all it is. But he has talked to Micah Parsons, and this is what they try to do. They try to get these team-friendly deals where, yeah, we're going to give you the highest paid non-quarterback in football history right now, but it would not surprise me if the offer that Jerry Jones made to Micah Parsons when he spoke to him was, let's do a 5-year deal, let's do a 6-year deal, let's do a 7-year deal. And the reason for doing that is, while it looks good in the beginning, as the years go on and as Micah Parsons continues to dominate as a pass rusher, more and more pass rushers are going to continue to reset the market. And eventually the player is going to fall very far behind when it comes to his market. And essentially that is what Jerry Jones has done to players. I remember when Tyron Smith, who was one of the best left tackles in football during his time in Dallas, he signed an 8-year, $109 million extension in Dallas, thanks to Jerry Jones doing just this. And he was locked into that contract for 8 years, plus the remaining years of his rookie contract. And during that time, he kept on being the best left tackle in football. When he signed the deal, he was the highest paid tackle in football. As the years went on, he dropped to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, eventually outside of the top 10. So there's a reason why David Mulugheta was hired. There's a reason why eventually Micah Parsons did respond on Twitter, and he made it clear, I'm not accepting any offer without David Mulugheta being involved. So he's going to eventually get involved in all of this, and they're going to continue to talk. I mentioned this, I would say a few weeks ago or about a month ago, that there have been those talks around the NFL. Is Dallas actually going to pay him? Could they maybe look to trade him? I mean, this entire thing happening, will Dallas ever say, you know what? Mulugheta is really good at what he does. He's going to try to get the best deal, shorter years, obviously a very high average. Do we maybe look to trade him over here and try to get multiple first-round picks when we know we have a $60 million per year quarterback on the roster with Dak Prescott, a $34 million per year wide receiver in CeeDee Lamb, a bunch of other players who are making high money. They also have to extend a player like Tyler Smith potentially this offseason, the guard, who could very much become one of the highest paid guards in football. So that stuff is something that I'm not going to rule out yet. I do think Dallas wants to pay him, but they tried to sneak a fast one over here and talk directly to Micah and get him to do a deal that would have made him maybe the highest paid non-quarterback in football right now. But I guarantee you the details in there would have not been great for the long term. So they're going to have to make a call to David Mulugheta. From my understanding, no call has been made, even though Micah Parsons told them, please speak to him. To this point, I believe Yahoo reported this, but Mulugheta has only spoken to the lead cap guy in Dallas as of late. The last time he spoke to Jerry and Stephen Jones was back at the Combine in Indianapolis, which was in February and early March. So it's been a while. We're now on April 2nd here in the NFL, and they have not spoken during that time. Jerry has only spoken directly to Micah, and Micah's making it clear, I'm not the one to speak to. I'll talk to you, Jerry, but the person to speak to here is David Mulugheta. But this is one of the only owners in the NFL that keeps on trying to do this. They try to get good deals. Frankly, Ben, earlier this offseason, Osa Odigizua signed an extension in Dallas, 4 years, $80 million. When that was signed, I came here on the show and said, that is a really good team-friendly deal there in Dallas. Would not surprise me if Jerry Jones spoke to Osa and told him, hey, do this for us. Keep on building your legacy here. Look at what Milton Williams got in free agency, $26 million per year. Osa was ranked higher on most free agency boards than Milton Williams, and he took a deal for 4 years and $80 million, $20 million per year. Milton Williams got $6 million per year more on the open market. If anything, he and his agent could have said, you know what, tag us. We're gonna go watch when Milton Williams gets in free agency, then revisit with us. But no, Jerry for sure did some things over there, and he was able to get a really team-friendly contract for Osa Odigizua. So he's been able to have success with this. He's had some failures with this, including with Dak Prescott and DeMarcus Lawrence and other players. And with Micah Parsons, it looks like it is not going to work, even though he tried.
All right. That's all you need to know with the situation going on there in Dallas. We'll certainly be keeping you up to date on everything that's going on there. But for now, let's go ahead and move on to the league meetings and everything that took place. There was a lot of things that were approved, a lot of things that were voted down, a lot of things that were tabled that we'll be getting into here shortly, as well as in the future, as we look to things potentially in May getting moved around. And one of those things that could be is the tush push. It's been the biggest topic of conversation for a while now. Certainly was during the league meetings. It has been tabled. Can you go ahead and walk us through why this was tabled, where we could see this going in the future, as well as the other rules that were approved and voted down?
So the tush push, which was probably far and away the most discussed topic at the owners' meetings, coaches, GMs were all asked about it, differing opinions all over the place. Ultimately, on Tuesday morning, when all the owners got into the room, keep in mind the vote is done by the owners, not by the GMs and the coaches. So those are the opinions that matter in the end. The votes were not officially counted because they knew they were not going to have the votes. They tabled this to May when there's going to be further owners meetings and no coaches and GMs there. That's going to be in Minnesota. They're going to talk about it then. But the numbers that came in was about 16 owners were for banning the play and 16 owners were for keeping the play. So it was quite literally split down the middle. And we've heard all the explanations out there. Some people just don't think it looks like a football play, more like a rugby play. Some people think you cannot take out a play because one team is very successful at it, which of course is the Philadelphia Eagles. There's other teams out there that have basically come out and said that they were shown presentations by Dr. Alan Sills, the NFL's lead medical officer out there. And he basically said, while there is no medical data right now that shows there have been injuries with this play, there is potential for catastrophic injury with this play around the spine and neck area. And that is something that we do not want to happen. We want to avoid disaster and not just wait for this to happen and then have a reaction to this play. So right now, we're at a 16-16 tie. They need to get 8 more owners to eventually say that we want this to be banned for it to actually go that way. The most notable thing that happened here on Wednesday, Ben, was the fact that NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell came out and he essentially acknowledged that there is very little data out there that shows this is a problem. But he also said, like Dr. Alan Sills said, that there is potential risk that could happen. And Roger Goodell basically came out and said it would make sense to go back to the old rule, which would prohibit players to push the quarterback from behind or anybody holding the ball. So if Roger Goodell wants the tush push to be banned, that is very significant. And he has a lot of power out there to speak to some of these owners who were against banning it and try to get them to flip it when they go and potentially vote on it come May in those meetings in Minnesota. So for now, it's tabled, but this thing is not done yet. There is still a chance this thing could get banned going into those May meetings. I also think the language that the Packers proposed in that initial proposal, it's a little bit there's potential for it to be manipulated is part of also the reasoning why it did not pass here on Tuesday. There's some people who are like, if you cannot run behind the center, which is what it says in the proposal, what if you run behind the guard? There's also part of it where it says you cannot push the quarterback immediately. That means if you wait 2 or 3 seconds, maybe you could. So people think there's some loopholes in the initial proposal that needs to be patched up over here going into those May meetings. But that is where it stands right now. For now, it's tabled. It was not turned down. It was not voted against. There is still potential for this to be discussed again. I expect it to be discussed again. And the fact that Roger Goodell, it sounds like, is siding with banning this play, in my mind, that is very significant going into the next owner meetings. One that probably surprised me the most, Ben, that was the Detroit Lions proposal that if you are a wild card team and you have a better record than a team that won their division, that you could have a higher seed going into the playoffs. There really was not much momentum for this going into Tuesday morning, but what was interesting was that there was a lot of discussion in that rule about this. While there was no vote, they also tabled this as well, whether they're going to discuss that in May or eventually next year. This is something they want to continue to look into. It's something that was a bit of a surprise. The Vikings, who would have had this rule would have helped, they actually were against having this happen for whatever reason. I thought that was an interesting note. But some of the things that were discussed in that room was maybe if you are a sub 500 team that wins your division, that type of a team cannot have a home playoff game. They would actually get penalized in this type of a situation, and the wild card team would have the advantage and get the higher seed and the home playoff game. That was discussed over here. There was also a discussion I heard about a wild card team, if they have 4 or more wins than a division champion with a losing record, that would be an option where maybe they could actually host a wild card game instead of the division winner. So there were different types of options that were held over here, but there's also a lot of support about the NFL. We care about divisions. We care about rivalries. We do not want to revamp the entire thing over here. So I don't think that is an option where we just change the entire format. But if a team is maybe sub 500, or if a team that wins is a wild card team but has way more wins, like 4 or 5 more wins than the divisional winner, then that could be an option over here. So some interesting strategies were definitely brought up. Nothing is happening right now, but I thought this would be just shot down and move on from it. There was actually some real discussion. The fact that it was tabled, there is more interest in discussing this in the future. The touchback, when it comes to the new dynamic kickoff rule, was also discussed. We mentioned this on yesterday's show. There was a lot of momentum for this to pass. It did pass. And essentially now, if you kick it out of the end zone, the touchback will now go to the 35-yard line instead of the 30-yard line. Commissioner Roger Goodell was a very big advocate of moving the touchback. He wants returns to be in the game. The interesting thing about this, that the vote was actually pretty close. The final vote was 25-7. In order for it to pass, you need 24 votes. So they just got over it to make this happen. But the return rate last year, the numbers the NFL showed the owners, was the return rate was 32.8%. The injuries went down. They believe by making this change, the return rate is going to be closer to 60 to 70% next year. There were a bunch of teams, including the Rams and the 49ers, who were just content with kicking the ball out of the end zone, letting offensive start at the 30. Now you're like, offensive starting at the 35. We're actually going to kick this ball short of the end zone, forcing a return and trying to stop the returner from making it past the 35, which is where it would be if we just kick it out of the end zone. So the NFL believes this will result in more returns. There's no more, quote unquote, bathroom breaks or a ceremonial play. They believe the return is back in the game, and the injury rate, which went down last year, this is the way to make it happen. So that officially passed, and it's going to be now moving forward. If you kick it out of the end zone, it will be at the 35-yard line. Overtime was another thing that was switched up over here and passed. This was a unanimous 32-0 vote of the year. Essentially, the overtime rules in the regular season will be the same as the postseason, meaning both teams will get possession of the ball in overtime. Up until now, if you got the ball first in the regular season in overtime and you scored a touchdown, the game was over. Now, if you score a touchdown, the other team still gets the ball. The most interesting wrinkle to all of this was that the initial proposal for this was a 15-minute overtime. The NFL basically went and said, we're not doing 15 minutes. We're going to go with 10 minutes under this format. And this really creates a lot of interesting dynamics, because if you're an offense and you get the ball first, do you just go into a 4-minute offense, try to chew as much time as possible, score a touchdown, and leave the other team with 2 minutes left, and that's it? Because this is not like the playoffs where if you get the ball second, you get to go into a second overtime and keep it going until your possession is over. If overtime is over and ends, that's where it ends in the regular season. Part of the reason why they went with 10 minutes and not 15 minutes was because they don't want, it's a health and safety thing where they don't want too many plays there in overtime for the player's body. Also, there is a networking thing when it comes to the TV networks with, Fox and CBS, where they don't want their games running too long into the next window. So if you're playing at 1 o'clock Eastern, you don't want that game to spill over to the late window. If you're playing in that late window, you don't want to potentially to spill over to Sunday Night Football. So that is part of the reason why they went with 10 minutes, but that officially will be in effect over here for the 2025 season. Some other things that we learned as well: the Detroit Lions proposal for illegal contact and holding penalties to not be an automatic first down, that was shot down. There was a vote. From what it sounds like, only 2 teams were for this. 30 teams said no. The 2 teams that were good with this was the Detroit Lions and the New York Jets, who have the Lions' former defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn as their new head coach. Every other team was against this. The Lions GM Brett Holmes, he did admit earlier this week the reason for why they proposed this was because they committed the most penalties with their man-to-man coverage, so they kind of wanted something over here. But other teams were against it, in part because the way DB coaches are going to coach this, if this was approved, was that if we have a 3rd and 19, for example, and a guy beats you downfield, just tackle him down to avoid a big play and take the 5-yard penalty or the 10-yard penalty and go for a 3rd down once again. They don't want DB coaches teaching that in the game, so they're going to keep it as an automatic 1st down. We also got some media news here on Tuesday. The NFL, which went into the Christmas business a few years ago, it is here to stay. Not a surprise. Last year, they switched the entire schedule in order to have Christmas games on Wednesday. They officially have entered the NBA zone. This year, the NFL on Christmas will be on Thursday, so they're going to have a triple header this year, 3 different time slots, an early window, a middle of the day window, and of course, a night window. Netflix, which had the games last year, they're going to be back over here for a 2nd consecutive year. They're going to have the early window game and the middle game window, and then at night, Thursday Night Football will be on Amazon Prime for that game. But the NFL went into Christmas a few years ago. They realized how many viewers they got. They realized they can make more money by having some other people join the party like a Netflix. And of course, it is now here to stay moving forward. One of the things that a lot of fans have been looking forward to, and there's been a lot of chatter that it's going to happen here in 2025, was we're getting rid of the sticks. There's no more measuring with, the sticks anymore. We're going to have an electronic system joining the party here in 2025 with the Hawkeye system. The method for measuring 1st downs moving forward will switch from the chain gangs to a camera-based technology system here in 2025. The traditional chain crew is still going to be on the field as a backup in case there's some electronic miscues or something not working. But moving forward, the NFL tested this in 2024. They did not have it actually being used, but they were testing it behind the scenes. They loved what they saw, and it's officially going to have over here in 2025. The system essentially notifies the officials on the field for the measurements outcome with virtual recreations of the measurements produced in real time for the in-stadium crowds and broadcast audience. We've, of course, seen, like tennis using this. The NFL has been very behind, but coming here in 2025, this process is in play. And the NFL also announced, which is really cool, this system takes about 30 seconds, which saves up to 40 seconds compared to what it used to with the chain gangs. That officially is gone over here in 2025. A couple more things here that happened. The Steelers made a very interesting proposal that we didn't speak about here on the show when it happened, but beginning in 2026, free agency, that legal tampering period, which is on Monday and Tuesday before free agency officially beginning on Wednesday. Up until now, the rules were that a team can only speak to the agent for a player who is about to become a free agent. That is going to change in 2026. We're moving forward now. A team is allowed to have 5 phone calls or Zoom calls with a potential free agent. We saw last offseason the Falcons got docked of a 5th-round pick for talking early with Kirk Cousins. The Eagles were investigated because maybe they spoke to Saquon Barkley early. Now you are allowed to speak to the player during that Monday and Tuesday. Again, you're going to have 5 phone calls allowed with a prospective free agent. And if we're being real, this kind of does happen around the NFL. There's tampering happening all the time with the agent. Sometimes it gets to the player as well. But if you do it quietly, the NFL won't do anything about it. But now you're allowed to do it. You won't be caught. No one has to check your phone to see if you spoke with a player. Now you are officially allowed to do it. A couple other things here just quickly to wrap it up. The NFL also allowed the replay assist. That was also officially passed through. Essentially what this is, we spoke about it the other day, but now if you have a penalty like a face mask or a horse collar where the penalty is thrown on the field, but the replay assist shows that it actually did not happen, you are allowed to pick up that flag from now on. The only thing you cannot do with replay assist is throw a flag when it was not initially thrown. So last year, that Sam Darnold egregious face mask, which was not called on Thursday Night Football versus the Rams, if that was to happen this year, that still would not be allowed to be called. A flag has to be thrown at first, and then replay assist would come in and help you decide if a flag should stay or not. They cannot actually throw a flag on a play where no flag was initially thrown.
Well, Ari, this has been fun. Hopefully, everyone was able to follow along with all of that. If you are having a hard time audibly listening to everything, check out our YouTube page where you can read the fun graphics on screen to help make sure that you understand every bit of context that's going on, but also make sure that you are following and subscribing on Apple, Spotify. And I made a mistake the other day and referred to making sure that people are following us on Prime. Well, technically, we are not on Prime. We are on Amazon Music. So, hey, make sure you're doing that as well.
I learn something new every single day, Ben. We just found out that I'm also on, what is it called? Prime? Amazon Music?
It's
What'd
just
you call it?
Amazon Music. That's what we're saying. Amazon
Music.
Music.
All right. Thank you to whoever listens to us on Amazon Music, even though we're not music. But here we are. So let's wrap it up here on this Wednesday. We will be back here tomorrow to go around the NFL once again. GMs, coaches, owners, they're all going back to their facilities or the pro day circuit and draft meetings and whatever. We will have a lot more draft coverage. If you did not hear our episode yesterday, we had Charles Davis, the great draft analyst from from NFL Network, who calls games for CBS as well. We talked about all of the biggest questions for this 2025 NFL draft. If you have not heard that one yet, go back one episode, and we will be talking much more about the draft over here in the coming days and weeks as we get closer and closer to the draft. We will see you all here tomorrow morning.